Today we'll talk a little bit about rigging vessels. And I said a little bit because this is a huge subject. And there are numerous and different guides and treatises dedicated to rigging. At the moment I'll address only two because lately most of the models that we have been discussing, barring the Carrack, of fairly late period, about the Napoleonic period, in fact. And for this period, one of the best sources of information, of course, is David Steele. He is better known for his naval architecture with a wonderful detailed technical drawings or plates of the construction and building of ships of the line. They have been republished since the originals, and you can sometimes find them quite cheaply. Assuming you have spare $1,200, you should be able to find a copy. Good luck. Returning to other things that he produced, first of all, it should be pointed out that he started publishing his naval books, naval architecture, his rigging, his seamanship, his art of making sails, art of spars, etc. fairly early in the immediate vicinity of the beginning of the French wars. It is based, of course, on even earlier sources, and his works went through a number of publications, regularly updated. The one that you see here, this reproduction, and the one most usually reproduced is the 1806 version of the book. So what period is covered by these? I would say that anything in the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars is covered by David Steele's book, this specific edition. Would I stretch it back to the American Revolutionary War? That would be a bit pushing the limits, especially since some vessels were rigged in a different way, some sails were different during the American Revolutionary War versus what came after that. So let's assume that they are accurate for the 20 plus years known as the French and Napoleonic Wars. This is a book this is the third volume. It has been reissued recently in a cheap paperback by Cambridge. When I say cheap, I mean the cost. It is not a cheap production. It actually is quite good quality binding. It is well illustrated with the original plates. It is type set, and the books are reviewed in the SYSTER channel, OLHA's channel. There she has paged through them and given you a detailed view of what to expect in them. This time I'm only going to talk about this specific volume. It is dedicated to the sizes of lines, and as many other of these videos, it started live. The idea came about from discussion that we were having at breakfast about the sizes of rigging of the vessels that she is building at the moment. So, how do you calculate them? Well, this is the beauty of David Steele. He does all of this for you. The book is divided into a few parts. Again, for detailed page by page, check the other channel. The first part of the book, as you can see here, is essentially vocabulary, a dictionary, showing us the terms that are used and what they meant. In the second part of the book, he goes in a little bit more detail. He again names the specific, the swifters, the halyards, the shrouds, etc. But he is telling you how exactly are they led, how are they belayed, how are they rigged, in what order are they rigged. And among these, he also discusses the parts that are prepared, or what nowadays in the pidgin English that we all are speaking would be said pre-rigged. What do you mean pre-rigged? Something is either rigged or it is not. There is no pre-rigging, or anything else for that matter. But don't let me get sidetracked with the language issues. The second part of the book, as I said, is giving you the detailed instructions of how to rig them. But of particular interest are the tables that are forming the other two parts of the book. In some places, the tables are divided into two depending on what type of vessel you are rigging. The first part of the tables, very detailed, are dedicated to all the three-masted vessels in the Royal Navy specifically. That is to say, the ships of the line of all the rigs, and in fact there is a difference between the third rates of 64 guns and the third rates of 74 guns. Of course, by the time of the Napoleonic Wars, the 64 gun pretty much has disappeared from the regular fleets. But they could still be seen upon occasion on colonial stations, out-of-the-way places. They still provided significant firepower in such isolated campaigns. Returning to this, in some places, of course, the quantities of the different types of lines, or rather ropes, from which the lines are made, are provided. Unfortunately, it is a little bit challenging for us to imagine, because it is given in weights rather than necessarily in lengths. Subsequently, in the description of how you do the rigging itself, he does mention what lengths of each line you have to rig the appropriate vessel. So much about the three-masted. Then the final part of the tables is dedicated to the two- and single-masted vessels. And there he includes brigs, snows, even ketches, and goes all the way down to the single-masted sloops. Besides the hundredweights, etc., in separate sets of tables, he provides also the rigging diameters. Or rather, I'm sorry, I take this back. It is not diameter. This is one of the key details that we need to discuss actually in this video. It is in the past, when ropes were made out of natural fiber, the sizes of the rigs were given in circumference, not in diameters as we do nowadays. Luckily for us, the calculation is fairly simple to convert the circumference of a rope into diameter, if that is how you prefer to work. The details are incredible. It is given in what type of rope. Is it cable laid? Is it shroud laid? How many strands, how much the circumference, how many strands into each of the braids goes, what quantities, what weight each of this is, how to warm, how to parcel, how to serve. And equally importantly, in the tables, he also provides the numbers of blocks with their dimensions, with their length, including also, of course, the diameter in this case of the sheaths of the blocks that are needed for each part of the rigging, whether this is braces, sheets, halyards, everywhere. He's providing the quantity of rope together with the types and dimensions of blocks. In other words, this little booklet is an absolute treasure trove for any ship modeler, not to mention ship reconstructor and archaeologist. I cannot imagine embarking. Here are some of the illustrations in the book showing you different two-masted vessels. Well, in this case, arguably a three-master, since it is a lugger. But schooners, luggers, fore and afters, sloops, sailing barges, hoys, everything is covered in this little book. I cannot overstate how important and what a wonderful service to historians Cambridge Library Collections have done by republishing this book at such an affordable price. Yeah, try to find an original version or the earlier reprints. As I said, you better be willing to be set back by anything in the vicinity of couple to $5,000 US. I should point out that there are separate set of tables at the very end of the book that are dedicated to the merchant marine. And it must be said, we are entering the dangerous grounds of discrimination, because it is much easier to find information and data about naval vessels than it is about the merchant marine. And yet, the merchant ships also were rigged according to rules and regulations. They were also based on good traditional practice, but it is harder to find Mr. Steele is kind enough, however, to provide us with a few classes of merchant ships. There he does not discuss necessarily the tables arranged by tonnage of the vessel, standardized approximate tonnage, rather than specific dimensions of the vessel or specific rigs. But still, it is providing you all the information that you would need, and goes all the way down to 60-ton sloops, from 1,300-ton East Indiaman all the way down to 60-ton sloops. So again, heartily recommended book. If you're interested in the later period, the period between, let's say, the emergence of the clipper ship and the disappearance of the Napoleonic Wars, and really even into the early clipper ships, especially Americans, I suppose this could be used. It would be George Biddlecombe's The Art of Rigging. And it is easily found, it can be bought, it is very cheap over publication. It was one of the early books that I obtained when I was still quite young, shall we say. It is, the relationship to Steele is immediately visible. It is very clearly knockoff. Some tables have changed, some of the arrangements have changed, some later rigs, some later practices are. It is essentially an updated Steele, but dedicated mostly to the merchant marine. So if you're building, let's say, the brig Pilgrim of Dana's 2 years before the mast, that's the one you need. It is otherwise arranged exactly the same way. It is telling you how to prepare the material before you need to apply it to the ship. It is describing to you how to raise the topmasts, how to rig them, how to set up the shrouds, what types of it. In many ways, it is just an updated version of Steele, but it is easily available. And if your fancy lies in the, let's say, post-1820 to about 1850s, it is a good source of information. I am here in this video scratching the surface. These are only 2 of the later books. In reality, there are many, many more treatises that have been published and that contain information all the way back to the 17th century. And perhaps one day I will be happy to shoot a video dedicated to these earlier periods too. With this, I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting, hopefully liking. And I am looking forward to seeing you again, to reading and doing my best to answer as many of the comments as I can. Ladies and gentlemen, a wonderful day to you.